We are 2 minutes past 10 in India, and I think 11:30 in Indonesia and 12:30 in Malaysia. And I believe people from Taiwan to have joined in. Welcome everybody to this session from IAB Tech Lab. Uh, Most of you are now aware that IAB Tech Lab has me now based out of New Delhi in India, and we have started our presence in the Asia Pacific region, the Southeast Asia region, including China and Australia. So I'm assuming that while most of you have heard about IAB Tech Lab, if you are part of the digital advertising industry, what we will do is I'll ask Shailley, so I'll just introduce our speakers, the panel of speakers. We have Shailley, who is our uh, Vice President for products and for global programs, and we have Amit Shetty, Vice President for Programmatic. And so Shailley would lead the introduction to IAB Tech Lab. I'll ask him to spend first 10, 15 minutes just to take us through what Tech Lab does. And that would possibly bring, for most of the people who may have just heard about Tech Lab but do not have the details, this can serve as the first grounding or of what we exactly do. Uh, Amit, after that, would take forward the SKAd networks. That's the topic for the today. And without much ado, Shailley, I'll hand it over to you. Let me run the slides for you.
Yep, thank you.
Is anybody left to join? Do I have to admit anyone?
I think we can wait for like a couple more minutes, Shiven, maybe to let people join.
Yes. Okay. So a lot of thanks to people from Malaysia, the Managerial Digital Association, the Indonesian Digital Association, people helping us out in Singapore and Taiwan for enabling this session. And we look forward that this will be informative and knowledgeable stuff to you. In course of March and April, we are proposing to have more sessions, and we'll keep you all informed on it. Just as a preview, we have one more session on the 18th of April, in which we will possibly talk about the distributed ledger technology, which how can it be used to imagine the identity crisis that we are having in our entire digital advertising industry with the phasing out of third-party cookies. And similarly, we would look at a session on 1st of April, where we will talk about contextual engine, how can that be used to serve advertising. So Shailley, let's start. I think we have a fair set of people. If you have any questions, please put them onto the chat. Uh, Maybe at the end of the midpoint at the session or towards the end of the session, we will pick up those questions.
Thank you, Shiven, and welcome everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, and good late afternoon for some of you, and of course, good late evening for me and Amit here. So yeah, like Shiven said, we'll just start with a brief introduction to Tech Lab and our standards portfolio, so that everybody is aware of what we do and how we work. And then we'll get on to the topic of the day, which is the SKAd networks. So Tech Lab is a global organization. We basically, our mission is to engage a community of global members, and we focus on developing foundational technology that helps the digital media to grow, and we build solutions like software standards and offer compliance services that are released with broad utility, broad availability by design. And we are a non-profit organization, and we act as a neutral, transparent body, and most of our work is open source, available to everyone. All of our standards are released for public comments that we collect from anyone, whether they are members or not. And then based on that, we finalize our final standards. So that's a quick overview of our mission. We can go to the next slide from here, Shiven. Uh, so the objective here is to create a transparent programmatic ecosystem for all stakeholders to make it a brand safe for our buyers, our advertisers, and brands, and to make the programmatic ecosystem that is developed over global standards and enables growth so that buyers, sellers, marketers, and publishers can all transact and interoperate with confidence to deliver real value for consumers and advertisers alike. So for buyers, we especially focus on the quality and availability of supply so that they can make decisions on where to buy their media and how to optimize their campaigns. For sellers, we engage with sellers to make sure that they are recognized, they are authenticated, the quality of their inventory is safe and available to buyers, and they are able to deliver for buyers efficiency of campaigns. And for marketers, again, we provide all the tools that help them determine the brand safety, help them adjust and manage their spends across campaigns on all media platforms, which includes web browsers and desktops, mobile phones, connected televisions, and smart speakers, and whatever else devices that come on in future. And for publishers, we want to ensure that our standards are able to protect their inventory. They are able to secure their users and provide the privacy that they need for their consumers. Next slide. Some of the work that we have done, you may already be aware of. For example, OpenRTB is kind of a default standard for transacting on programmatic open programmatic bidding standards, or VAST, which is the standard for delivering video advertising. And then we have developed TCF, which is the Transparency and Consent Framework, to support the privacy regulations like the GDPR. And then one of our flagship software products is the Open Measurement SDK that allows publishers to install one SDK and support all of their advertisers in managing impressions and viewability of the campaign. So that's kind of some of the key and more popular standards. Besides that, we have standards like ads.txt and sellers.json to address fraud, MRAID, which is pretty much a default standard for delivering ads on mobile phones. And then we have developed the content taxonomies for enabling brand safety. So that's just a quick overview of some of our key standards. And why we need these standards are the biggest analogy, or the best analogy that we provide is something like the Wi-Fi or the Bluetooth or the USB. Just like you can buy any of these products and they allow you to connect any of the devices that you're operating it. We do something similar for digital advertising that help you reduce your product cost, allow you to interoperate across screens, and which allow you to develop your products much more quicker and get the speed to market and mitigate risks associated with having to comply with different standards. And all of this together helps fuel market innovation. Next slide. So all of our programs are designed today to ensure that the delivery of the advertising is enabled on all screens and all platforms that the users are using today. And this has happened in the last 4 or 5 years, that all of us are interacting with not just one television or a radio, but we have a phone in our pocket, we have a television in our living rooms, we have smart speakers that we interact with, and then we have our desktops, which we spend a lot of time doing our work during the day. So In terms of the challenges or issues that we address for the digital media, these are the four areas that we focus on today. The first and foremost that I think everyone is currently worried about is the identity, data, and privacy, which is happening due to multiple forces that are driving that. First one being regulations, that each country is coming out with their own regulations to protect the data of their consumers and provide permissioned and consented privacy options to the users. The second is brand safety and ad fraud, which is one of the biggest concerns for advertisers, that their advertising is placed against what they consider a brand safe and protecting their brand identity and brand objectives. And the third one is, of course, ad experiences and measurement. So ad experience is very important to ensure that the users of or consumers of the publisher's content have a pleasant experience, and as well as the brands leave a pleasant impression on the users. And the second thing is measurement, which is what is the return on investment for a brand when they spend money on a particular media. And the last one is the programmatic effectiveness. That is when you're transacting through an open real-time bidding platforms. How do you get the best out of that? How do you make the best out of the money that you're spending? And how transparent that transaction is, so that you know exactly where your money is being spent. Next slide, please. And this work reflects, our work reflects in all of these areas. So we are working on achieving privacy by design. So you will start seeing and all of this work is being carried on under what we are calling Project ReArc. You will start seeing solutions that are being put forth this year for requests for public comments to develop the basic foundations that ensure that the privacy aspects for users are built into the design of all our specs and protocols. And they are also addressing all the global legislations. On the brand safety front and the ad fraud front, we already have a very good portfolio of the seller side transparency, like ads.txt and sellers.json, while we are pushing on taxonomies to enable interoperability and assessment of brand safety. And then some of the other upcoming standards are ads.cert, which take the sellers.json and ads.txt concepts to a step further, where we are going from authorization to authentication. And also something that's not mentioned here, we are also working on the buy-side transparency, so that sellers also understand who their buyer is and can prevent against the bad actor activity like malware distribution. And then this is our full standards and portfolio, again, classified under those four categories. We've highlighted some of the key priorities that we are looking at. So Project ReArc being amongst our leading priority. Data label is another effort that we have undertaken. This is mainly geared towards buyers of data, so that they can do a comparison and between what they're buying. For example, if you're buying data about people who are interested in buying a car in the next 3 months, you will get data from like multiple data providers, but how do you compare the audience that is behind that data? That data label enables that. And of course, we'll continue building on the transparency and consent framework, and then the California law, that is the CCPA, to build a more global framework out of that. And on the brand safety and ad fraud, like I already mentioned, ads.txt is kind of our flagship product to allow publishers to declare authorized sellers and then the sellers.json helps to match what the publisher is saying versus what the sellers is saying. And then we have introduced the supply chain object in the OpenRTB transaction. So that helps you trace all the entities that are involved in selling that particular piece of impression or that inventory. On the experiences side, we are focusing on VAST and SKAd as one of the two main standards that allow you to deliver video ads, and then SKAd allows you to deliver interactivity in a safe and secure manner that is in control of the publishers. And for the measurement, open measurement is kind of our flagship product, which is very well adopted globally. I think if we have the slide in here, the adoption in APAC region is about over 20% of our total adoption. Yeah. And of course, we have podcast measurement guidelines and compliance associated with it for the very fast growing podcast medium. In the program effectiveness, we are continuously improving upon OpenRTB and OpenDirect standards and introduced CATs last year as a way for non-bidded automation of buying of ads focused on video. And then we have spiders and bots that many of you may be already familiar with that allows you to track a list of IP addresses and filter the data center or IP addresses that are sources of bot activity. And at the same time, we also focus on emerging technologies. So blockchain is one of our other working groups, which actually we have changed the name this year to call it DLT, which is Distributed Ledger Technologies and Cryptography. So we are constantly doing an R&D on these new concepts and how they can be applied to AdTech. Next slide.
Sorry.
Yeah, while we're waiting for that, yeah. So, and every year, like we do the planning to kind of understand where the industry is going and what are our members asking for to be performed in that particular year. So for this year, we have like 4 priorities. The first one being addressability in the wake of deprecation of third-party cookies and actions taken by platforms like iOS 14 for having more restricted use of the IDA, popularly used IDFA. The second priority is technical standards for privacy, which is our TCF and CCPA framework. And then we are also working on a new global privacy framework that has extensions and can be applied by global companies working across different regions, or somebody working in their own region can have the right methods to incorporate in their programmatic transactions to communicate the privacy settings that the user has allowed, and others can act according to that. The next priority is, of course, the transparency on supply chain, which is both sides from sellers to buyers. And then one of the big projects we are undertaking there is the transparency project, where we are trying to collect all of this data into one place. Today, a lot of the data that has been generated through ads.txt, sellers.json, or compliance of our products or adoption of our products is fragmented. And for one company that's doing business with 5 other companies, it's very difficult for them to find out and build confidence. So this project will allow you to go to one place in our tools portal and be able to find out everything about your business partner as to what their compliance is, what kind of standard and which version have they adopted, and whether their ads.txt and sellers.json are in compliance with the specification or not. And the last of our priorities Definitely not in that order. The 1, 2, 3 doesn't mean that this is the fourth priority. They are all of equal priority. Is focusing on measurement and attribution accuracy and consistency. So we are taking our open measurement SDK to cross-screen. We started with iOS and Android platforms. We just launched in late December the open measurement for web browsers, which works on desktops and mobile browsers. And then we are introducing this year for connected televisions. To start with, we will be launching with TV OS and Android TV. And Android TV covers a lot of devices like Amazon Fire, Chromecast, and a host of other devices that use Android technology as their OS. And then we'll also work on Roku TV, which is a very popular set-top box in US and also gaining popularity in other areas, other regions. And of course, this is all supported by our VAS standard, Siemens standard, and then of course, like I said, podcast is a very fast-growing podcast, and audio as both are very fast-growing areas. So we did release a version of a new guidelines 2.1 this year, and we'll be making sure that we're continuously up to speed with what is required to do measurement on podcast. This is just a quick snapshot of some of the adoptions that we've got. S.txt has been adopted by, actually it's not thousands, it's about 3 million companies that we are already collecting data from. Sellers.json was one of the fastest adopted standard that we had with about, I think it's crossed over 1,000 companies now. Open measurement is now about 85 plus companies, and about half, like I said, are non-US, and about more than 20% are from the APAC region. So that's the kind of adoption that we get from all the, as you can see, these are all the influencer and leading companies in different regions. Next slide. In terms of our work, we kind of work globally. Like I said, TechLab is an independent organization. We are not part of IAB. We are technically a separate organization, and we work with all of the IABs, 46 IABs across the globe, as well as we work with a lot of other trade organizations. Like we've been talking to Indonesia Digital Association, Malaysia Digital Association. We work with TAG. We work with ISPA, the ANAs, the 4As, the agency organizations, the advertiser organizations, and we are also working with WFA, which is the worldwide organization for advertisers. So we work in tandem with all of them. But like I said, our focus is more on technology. Most of these organizations focus on policy and research and business in their local region. But technology goes across boundaries. So we focus on that. And as you can see, our board of directors represents the who's who of the industry today. Next slide. Just a quick overview of how we work with other organizations. So IABs, the IDA or MDA and other organizations typically focus on educating the industry, conduct research, have policy groups to lobby with the government, provide guidelines and business practices, and also focus on events and networking. Whereas TechLab is specifically focused on technical standards and supporting product development. So we focused on creating protocols like OpenRTP specifications for VAST, or software and tools like the Open Measurement SDK, or the new tool about Transparency Center that we're building right now. And then we also offer compliance programs so that we can certify the compliance of your implementation, that technically it has been properly integrated it is working as expected by the specification. And then we also do supporting education and events, but our events are more focused on product and engineering audiences. So instead of talking about the business of podcast, we will talk about what are the troubleshooting that you need to in podcast. How do you measure, podcast downloads? So that's the difference between the IAB and the IAB Tech Lab. And together we provide you as a platform for proprietary innovation, where you can focus on, differentiating your product, on packaging and pricing, on developing your product and innovation of your products. Next slide. So how to get involved? Of course, we are a member organization. So all of our the work that we do gets funded through member fees. And as a member, the benefits that you get is that you can drive ROI for your products. You get an opportunity to influence the industry if you have innovative ideas that the whole industry can use. You can sponsor targeted events, and you get discounts on some of our services that we offer. You can learn from your peers and network with them. And you can connect with members from over 750 companies, and you can adopt the standards. You get a head start in adopting the standards by testing them even before they're released. And you can that helps you develop trust within your ecosystem partners. Next slide, please.
Yes. Thank you, Shailley. I would now move it on to Amit. For more on Tech Lab questions, we can take it at the end, and you can reach out to your Malaysian Digital Association networks and the Indonesian Digital Network organizations. We work with them closely, and we have a partnership. We are going to set up a partnership program with them, and the more and more information will start reaching on to you as we discuss things with them. Amit, your ground.
Sounds good. Thanks, Shivendra. So I'll be covering the recent, well, I guess it's been announced a few months ago now, iOS 14 related updates from Apple, and the impact that those have on our standards, especially, but in general, a little bit about the ad tech space as well. So the main things that when iOS 14 was announced, there were a number of privacy-related updates that they announced at that time. There were a number of smaller things like the different changes around the geolocation, a privacy report that talks about the details about tracking information for various apps. But the two key things I would say that are part of that part of that update were, number one, changes to how IDFA is supposed to work, the identifier for advertising, and the second thing is around how the app install attribution, basically how attribution would work, and specifically for app installs. So in terms of the IDFA, the big change there is that there is a lot more detail now, and there's going to be that screen that you can see the screenshot of over there, which should be popped up to the user in order to accept that they can be tracked or not. So that definitely is a big change over there. And the second piece is as far as the attribution goes, they defined a whole new mechanism for doing attribution, basically. And they started off with focusing on app install attributions, but now they are also looking at view attribution as well. So we'll get to that in a second. But basically, the big change is that they have limited because they've limited the amount of tracking that you can do. The big change is also that they want to reduce the real time. They want to use their mechanism, which is called SKAd networks, to do your attribution. So when you have an app that you show an app install kind of an ad, and then you go install the app, you have to follow their mechanism of SKAd networks to get the attribution around that app install. And the key change, actually one of the big changes there, I would say, is that you can no longer do a real time. You don't no longer get real time signals around that. It's an aggregated and delayed information. So basically the goal really being they want to keep again the focus on privacy, right? So they want to basically reduce the opportunity for people to figure out who it is and so on. So those are the main changes that they announced with iOS 14. And Shivendra, can you go to the next slide? And there's been a whole bunch of discussion on this topic. I'm sure that all of you have seen that as well, but I thought I'll highlight a couple of things. So one is there is a whole bunch of discussion about, so maybe if the IDFA is, with the change to the IDFA, one of the big expected results of that is that it'll probably mean that this is kind of the end of the IDFA in many ways as we know it, right? Basically, the chances of that with that scary looking prompt, the chance of users agreeing to that people feel are low. Now we don't know that for sure, but that's basically the opinion in general. And of course, attribution is also completely changing. So, but yeah, as far as the IDFA goes, people thought, maybe they can just use their own identifiers without using the IDFA. But that's something that Apple quickly came back to clarify that, okay, if you're not allowed to use any other identifiers, you cannot use for doing cross app user tracking, basically. So there was a whole thread with Facebook, for example, where Facebook initially thought that they would be able to use Facebook logged in users, and then they clarified that is not going to be the case. So the bottom line there with IDFA is that you're not allowed, if the user does not give you explicit permission to track them, you're not allowed to use either the IDFA or your own login as well. And the last part to that is that there is something called an IDFV identifier is a vendor-based identifier. So basically something that works across all the apps for a given publisher. So you are allowed to use that across your own apps for things like frequency capping and so on. But that's again very limited in scope, only for all the apps from a given publisher. Other than that, there's a lot of concern around consent fatigue, right? So there are so many different discussions like GDPR in Europe, TCF, and so on, which are again prompts for getting user permission. And it is unfortunate that Apple chose to have their own proprietary thing for iOS, but that's something that we are now going to have to deal with at this point. So that's the take across the industry. Can you go to the next slide, Shivan? As far as the Tech Lab's efforts go, from a broader perspective, we are having conversations in the context of Project Rearc around identity and privacy and so on. And part of that is, I think, going to be a lot more emphasis on things like the content taxonomy to do contextual targeting, audience taxonomy to be able to do a cohort-based audience targeting, and so on. But the direct set of work that we have been doing has been in the OpenRTB subgroup focused on SKAd networks, and that's what I'll focus on in the next few slides. Can you go to the next slide? Great. So this slide kind of covers at a high level all the changes that we have been working on. The first one is a very simple, and this again is not. It is to support what the mechanism in which the mechanism that Apple has presented, right? So what are the changes in OpenRTB that are needed, and other places that are needed to support that mechanism. We made a change to the bid request device object. We have an extension around that where we provide support for the IDFV as well as the more granular information around authorization status for the IDFA. So that's one update. The second update is around the SKAd networks, the SKAd networks related work. And we have made changes to basically an extension for the bid request and the response, basically to enable DSPs, SSPs, and everyone to be able to pass that information back and forth. And what I mean by that is that in order for this whole thing to work, the app has to, in the app, in the app, there'll be a list of SKAd network IDs that the app developer has decided to support. And then while making a bid request, they'll have to pass in that list of IDs that they support, in other words, that can be used for attribution. And then the DSP on the buy side, you can now look at that list of IDs and decide whether that for that particular impression, can I get attribution or not? And then based on that, the DSPs can respond. So that's the basic idea. And in order to support that, we have made some updates to send the list of IDs back and forth, if you will. So that's the basic set of changes over there. But then we quickly realized that, okay, sending a whole bunch of SKAd network IDs back and forth is probably not the best use of the bandwidth, and it's going to increase costs significantly. And that's the reason why we decided that we have to do a better job of managing that IDs, right? So basically, initially we had two proposals where we talked about individual SSPs maintaining their list of supported SKAd network IDs. But then we decided that the better path might be for having a centralized shared list managed by the tech lab of the IDs. And that's a tool that we have released, and I'll talk to that in a second.
1 minute, Amit. I was just one request, Shivendra.
Yeah.
If you can expand this slide to more than 100%, that diagram is not clear. I think it'll be good for people to just take a look at a clearer diagram version.
So the last part that I did want to close on is that is a thing that says number 3 there. That's the piece where there is work that app developers have to do to download the list of IDs that they want to support and then create a plist out of that. And that's something that we are working on right now to kind of figure out how we would basically see if there is a tool that we can provide to help improve that implementation, but we'll get to that in a second. The picture over there that you can see is probably a little too small still, but basically shows the flow of information across the system, right? So from the app to the SSP, passing the information about the when they're trying to make a bid request, and then the SSP when they send the request across. That's when they pass the SKAd network IDs or use the list to understand what range within the list is supported and so on. And then when you come back, if the bid response includes a supported SKAd network ID, then the app is now able to, now the app knows that it can do attribution with that particular SKAd network ID. And so when it does the app install, it'll pass that information along into the Apple APIs with that particular ID. So that's the way that the flow works. And yeah, actually, I should say that blog post that we have linked over there, and that URL for the GitHub extension has a lot more detail and provides a lot more provides a pretty detailed description of how to implement it and how to use all of these things. So please do take a look at that and reach out to us if you have any questions on any of that. Can you go to the next slide, Shivendra? So basically, as far as what can you do right now, right? So one is, of course, if you are someone who is interested in getting attribution and you need a SKAd network ID, you should reach out to Apple immediately and get an ID from them. Next, actually, this may be a little older slide that I had, but basically, you should go to the Tech Lab portal and register that SKAd network ID with that with our tool, so that it's now a part. It becomes a part of that that list. And then, of course, join the programmatic working group to work on us on the SKAd network extension and also the project rearc. On the next couple of slides, I'll show the tools, the tool itself. So if you go to the TechLab tools portal, the tools.iabtechlab.com, you can, if you're not registered before, you can register with the login and so on, and then pick the SKAd network ID list. Can you go to the next slide? And then if you are if you want to register your SKAd network ID, you would click on the register SKAd network ID link. And then you would basically enter your information over there. Now, there is a charge for for registering your SKAd network ID. Shailley, what's the charge? Do you recall?
Pardon? Yeah, so it's
the annual fee.
There is a small fees for us to be able to maintain this infrastructure. It's $150 if you're a member of IAB Tech Lab, and it's $200 if you're not a member of IAB Tech Lab.
Right. Yeah, and
you can pay by credit card. So.
Right, exactly. So we figured that we hope that this is a list that will have a significant adoption, and so that's the reason why we figured a small fee is going to be sufficient to get things going and support our the development costs at the same time. And I should also say the list itself is free to access for the publishers, so there's no charge on that front to download the list. Can you go to the next slide, Shivendra? And that's the link to access the list. So you can either click on that link, and if you go to the next slide, you can either download the JSON file, the list as a JSON file, or you can also we also provide an API endpoint to be able to use that in a automation if you want to use it in for automation. So we provide that as well. Can you go to the next slide? Oh yeah, so that's basically the last set that I have. Do we want to do questions now, Shivendra, or?
Yes, 2-3 just things. We will be sharing this entire deck and the recording to all the people who have joined this stuff. So do not worry if you have not noted down these things. And next couple of days, we will make this deck and recording available to everyone. And so no worries on that. I would open the floor for questions. I think request if you can type in your questions onto the chat box, and I can call out the name if there is additional clarification needed to expand the question. So if you can at least type few of your questions there, and then we can I can call out people to unmute whose question is being taken up.
And I mean, feel free to speak up too, like unmute yourself and go ahead and speak if you have any questions.
Yeah, if it's easier to just ask.
Yeah, you can. If you can, it's easier. Please feel free to unmute and ask the question. So the questions can be anything about Tech Lab, anything questions on SKAd networks, on registering for the SKAd networks. If you are a mobile Apple app developer, you would need those lists to declare your friendly networks through which you would be sharing your data. So please feel free to ask any questions that you have around this. So no worries, that's okay. Shailley, is there anything that you have to say? Amit, you can add, and then otherwise we will end the meeting. It's possibly lunchtime in Malaysia and Indonesia, and people are hungry while you all have to get to sleep.
Yeah. So just wanted to add, like we quickly organized this session mainly to focus on SKAd networks because Although Apple has not, as usual, given us an exact date, they are pretty secretive about when and what they launch, but they have indicated early spring, which means early spring in US means mid to late March. So there's not too much time when this thing will start getting rolling out. And for app publishers to get the right attribution from their demand partners, and for the agencies and advertisers to understand from which media they're getting the attribution for app installs and other actions. And this is pretty urgent that in the next 1 to 2 weeks that you make sure that all your partners are registered and you're able to get their list and be able to add them to your P list in your apps.
Yes, Amit, you were saying something.
I was actually going to say something similar, that there is a real urgency to the whole SKAd networks and IDFA story. So Shailley basically said what I had to say.
Yeah, so I have just typed out the URL for our website. There is a lot of information. So a lot of the slides that we have shared today, especially the 4 pillars, the entire thing you want to know about privacy, brand identity, measurement, and OpenRTB. There are links for all of you to go. Please, if you are in digital advertising industry, I believe these are must have, a lot of resources that you can access and understand. Going further, just wanted to make a point. Then on 18th of March, we will have another session on distributed ledger technology. This is how the distributed ledger technology is one of the proposals in the project REARC as to how one can manage identities. Further to that, we were doing another session on the 1st of April. Both of them are Thursdays, usually the same time, 10 o'clock India, 11:30 Indonesia, 12:30 Malaysia. Same time, we will be doing these 2 sessions, and we will keep you informed of 2 further sessions we are planning in April, which would be possibly around the Universal ID framework, which is another proposal of how to manage identities after the deprecation of third-party cookies. So please stay informed. We will be again sharing this deck and the recording with you. Please feel free to pass it on to further to your colleagues. With that, I'm signing off. Thanks, Shailley. Thanks, Amit, for joining.
One more thing,
Yes.
I just wanted to add, this should not be considered like a one-way communication that me, Amit, and Shivendra are working on something and lecturing you on that. We want this to be like a two-way communication. I'm pretty sure that within your teams and your companies, you are also thinking about all of these things. So we do welcome suggestions and solutions that you have thought about, and we'd be happy to organize another session to showcase that to the local community there, and also learn from what you are doing and take it back to the rest of the Tech Lab membership.
So I've just shared my email access to box to which all of us have access, and if possible, we would communicate back and try to clarify anything that you have. So thank you, everyone. Have a good afternoon, and good night to Shailley and Amit for joining this, and thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye.